Welcome to the market recap presented by Tackle Trading. Get in the game.
Good afternoon, Tackle Traders, and hello, YouTube. This is Frank coming your way with the market recap for the 21st of November. It is the day before Thanksgiving. Not a ton of things happening today in the market. We did hold support, broadly speaking, on relatively lower volume as we move into the holiday, this upcoming Thanksgiving holiday. Not terribly surprising, maybe, traders getting a head start on the weekend, right? So, oftentimes, during the Thanksgiving, Christmas holiday stretch, you will see a little lower volume, and it seems like that's kind of where things were today. You did see a few interesting things. You had Foot Locker gap up big on good earnings. Earnings that came out this morning seemed a little bit better as a collective unit than the ones that came out yesterday morning. So better timing, I guess, on that. We're done with earnings of any real note. There are a handful of companies that I didn't really recognize on Friday before the open. But any S&P companies, we are through with that for the week, and a pretty light week looking at you next week with just a handful of S&P 500 companies coming out with earnings next week. So we're really, in kind of that light stretch. We'll keep checking in on them, of course. Good habit to be in. But really, until we kind of get back from Christmas time, or close to Christmas time, maybe, we've got a little bit of time where we can kind of be relatively earnings light. So thank you all for joining me. As always, guys, it's my pleasure to see you guys all. Taking a look at our indexes, it was it was a dull day. And again, that's what I wanted. I didn't want, I kind of saw the futures up this morning. I was thinking, don't take off today. I don't trust that. And I don't think very, very many people would have. Certainly nobody did because we didn't really take off today. We did hold, although we did see a little bit of selling coming into the close in all of the major indexes coming off for about the last hour or so, 45 minutes. People were locking in some of these tiny profits maybe that they picked up today. But most importantly, from a purely technical perspective, we were able to, at least for another day, hold that bottom on both the S&P, the Dow, and the Russell, helps at support level too. Not quite the same chart, but it was able to hold nonetheless. Really, I don't think a lot has changed. Personally, my expectations are we're going to have another day kind of looking like this on Friday. I obviously could be very wrong. I don't know the future. But with it being a half day in the market and day after Thanksgiving, I know I won't be around. And so a lot of traders won't be around. So I would expect that the chart probably won't change too dramatically on Friday. I certainly hope it doesn't. I don't want to see it break, one way or another on a day, when no one's trading. So, but going into next week, assuming that that's the case, and again, I don't know, that's just what my expectations are. Assuming that that is the case, we've got a pretty important price point to be watching as we work into next week from a broad point of view. Over in the Dow, very, very similar situation to the S&P, where it was able to at least for a day. We have it tomorrow. We win by default, right? We hold support tomorrow because there is no open market. So at least for the U.S. market. So again, it's something, right? Holding support matters, and breaking support matters too, right? So at least it showed a little bit of strength. NASDAQ had a nice little pop, but as it kind of approached, that low from I guess it would have been Monday, nobody was willing to stick around, right? That's going to be its first challenge. Whenever you're in a situation like this, why it's so hard to break out of downward trends, you have just so many challenges. You have intraday resistance. You have old support that might act as resistance. You have moving averages, whatever moving average you use, the short-term averages are going to be falling down. That's our first challenge, in my opinion, right around 6,700. To kind of give it an actual number, although I definitely look at it more of a zone than a specific number. That's the first thing we got to challenge, right? I'm not putting a lot of faith in it until I see it start to do something. But there, again, it kind of caught up with some of the bullish movement today. Russell actually was up the most here today, but kind of funny. It ran right up into, again, talk about those challenges, that first level challenge, that previous low from a few days back. That's kind of where we topped out before kind of selling off before the day was through. Still haven't broke anything. Again, when we look at the Dow and the S&P versus the Russell and the NASDAQ, which two are leading the way, right? Are we going to bounce off of the support, in the Dow and the S&P and have that, potential at least double bottom or at least short-term rally? Or are we going to kind of continue the tradition of the Russell and the NASDAQ as of late, where they've already taken out that support? Now they have to contend with it as resistance. But definitely, again, a day that the bull, I don't think it means a whole lot other than support held, and that's always a good thing in my mind. But I think the bulls, well, after the last couple of days, they'd take anything they could get, right? So I don't know how many people were super bullish these last couple of days. I don't know anybody personally who was, but there's always someone out there that thinks it's the bottom, right? As we look at the material sector, we did kind of show some upward movement, pretty nicely early before giving a large chunk of it back. I didn't love to see that. This is one of those areas that I do like more than other areas from a bullish point of view. And so showing that upward movement off of, what I consider personally, at least, to be the support level I'm eyeballing was a positive sign. I wish it would have closed a little bit stronger, but now I at least feel like I have a pretty good idea where my line in the sand can be. We can use, I'm going to be looking at yesterday's low. If that's taken out, then I think we can say, okay, well, we broke that support. We, showed a shift in momentum in the, I guess would be Wednesday whenever we're having this hypothetical talk. So this will kind of be the area that I'm watching. As long as this holds, I am still open to this area personally. Obviously, I'm not a crazy bull on anything in this market, but as long as support holds, I am okay with that personally. I know not everybody agrees with me there. Now, over in energy, this is why you don't assume support's going to break, right? As ugly as it got there yesterday, bounced right back. Now, again, we ran into those short-term averages and definitely sold off of the highs with the market in the energy sector. But once again, that support level holds as we move into next week. Obviously, I don't know how much more information, how many more times we have to see it play off of that to believe in it. I think we all do. But I certainly think that will be where eyes continue to watch. It's going to be interesting because now we're starting to get into you're going to have to make up your mind one way or another, energy sector. We've already put in a little lower swing high right here, right, in the form of the, late last week, early this week. Either we're breaking support, we're making those lower highs, our moving averages are pushing down further and further and further. Doesn't have to happen Friday, doesn't have to happen Monday, but pretty soon it's going to have to make a call, whether it's either break to the downside or start to break back up to the upside. Obviously, right now, I think, there's not a great directional play in this sector. A ton of weakness in crude, and these companies can definitely be impacted by that. But I think we know what to look for, from a price point of view within this sector. We've been doing it for a while, and, support holds. They call it support for a reason, right? As we look at the financials, I didn't love the price action myself here today. We'd have a nice run up, but we really did sell off, much like the overall market. Again, I continue to look at this actual low point that we've now tested a couple of times as the support level. I was feeling a lot more comfortable as a potential bull a couple of days ago. That hasn't been changed dramatically, but I would be lying if I said I like it as much today as I did, late last week as a potential area to buy. The support level is important to me, at least. If that breaks, I will definitely take off bullish glasses, at least for the short term. As long as it holds, if I see breakouts and things like that within that sector, I would be okay with them, personally, but I'll be very, very selective. But what I'd really like to see before I can say I am comfortable being the bull is at least some upward movement, getting back above some of these short-term averages, back above 26.50, just kind of looking at the price point here today. I'll feel a lot better if we're able to take that out as a potential bullish area. Again, you always have to be, very picky as a trader, right? I think at least. Over in the industrial sector, it went with the market. It closed up on the day, but there really wasn't a whole lot of bullish activity in that sector. As you kind of look at the open, we gapped up and kind of drifted with the market. Is this market going to run? That's kind of what everybody seemed to be thinking this morning. Why is it going to run off the support? But really, close, flattened most of the day, and then much like the overall market, kind of sold off in that last hour. I don't like the way this chart looks at all from a bullish point of view. We don't have any support levels that I think are notable until we get back down through here. We're really even able to challenge, that low point that we put in from last week as a potential resistance zone. People gave up before we even got to test it, and selling off and closing near the low of the day. I don't think that's a very pretty looking bullish chart. I imagine I'm probably not alone in that. So again, one of those areas that, just hasn't broken any resistance. I mean, I guess that's really what it comes down to. If you can't break any resistance, you can't go up, right? I mean, you can go up for a day or two, but you're not going up anywhere, real, right? If you can't break some resistance. And we've yet to see that within the industrial sector. Interesting to see where that one takes us next week. Nice bounce off of the low yesterday in the technology sector. But again, where's the follow through? Again, I know it wasn't a great day to buy, with the holidays, and, I wasn't going to be jumping in with both feet, after yesterday and things like that. But, where was it? Nobody seemed to care. Yeah, we gapped up on the open. Yeah, yes. We're not dropping anymore. So I guess that's kind of what it looks like to me. I do think we have continued to be careful with this. We've seen a lot of bearish signals. We do have a reasonable level of support area that we are kind of bouncing off of right now. We're trying to hold right now. I'll definitely be looking at the lows back here as kind of that first challenge, or some falling short-term averages as they catch up. Right now, again, I'll never truly argue with somebody buying off of support. I never will, because I'd never be selling at support. So I'll never really argue against somebody who's willing to buy support. But other than that, I have a hard time seeing a bullish argument with the way that the sector is looking right now. I really, really do. Be interesting. Run up to 66 and let us challenge that thought process, right? Let's get a nice little bearish retracement, and then we can decide how we feel about it. Over in Staples, they showed a lot of weakness today, closing at, I guess technically a little bit below their 50-day moving average, but approximately at their 50-day moving average, as that just was not an area of any interest. I'm not really loving this pullback. I mean, again, it's hard to gauge because we had so much selling yesterday, and yesterday was just such a bearish day that it's going to mess up some of the charts, right? And maybe that is the case here in the Staples. Maybe it's not. The only thing I know is I don't love how we got down here. We pulled back. We saw nice, effort off of the breakout point, running up. But now all of a sudden, again, whether it's just a victim of circumstance or something more, I don't know. But we tried to get, buying back into this area, only to shatter that swing low. Okay, not the best thing, but I get it. It was on one of those days. But really just carrying over here today, I didn't necessarily expect this to be a strong, move today with the way that the market behaved. Money going into some other areas, especially early, but I didn't expect it to, challenge its 50-day moving average today either, if I'm being honest. For me, I'm not going to change my overall tune on it just yet, but how it reacts on Friday and Monday to this 50-day moving average is going to be pretty important to me. I really think that just from a, again, anytime I'm thinking bullish in a downward, turning market, or really, any direction in a volatile market, I always want to be sold. And I think the best way to be sold, back on the Staples is going to be back up here. Let somebody else. And again, I know I'm a giant wimp when it comes to this stuff, so I get that. But I think the best way is let somebody else come in off of the 50-day moving average, run us back through that resistance, get us back into that 55.50, and then it looks just like a deep pullback, deeper than maybe I expected. So that will probably be the way I look at it going into next week. But I do think it's going to be interesting to see, if we do see any movement off of that 50-day moving average here on Friday and Monday. That'd be fun to see. But yeah, definitely didn't expect it to sell quite as much as it did today. I would be lying if I said otherwise. Utilities, as we've been known to do, they break and they just can never carry through a second day, selling off pretty heavily. It wasn't a surprise at this one just because we've seen this one before. I wasn't bearish necessarily on it, but we've seen this one before. And I really think, when you look at the weekly chart of utilities, it tells you all you need to hear about it. 4 of the last 5 weeks, we've broken out on the weekly chart only to close, back down below that breakout point. It is just a ton of resistance. Why? I don't know. I don't know why. It's just, it's short resistance, but man alive, it just is having one heck of a time. But we're also clearly very sideways. And that's, again, as a whole, that's kind of how we've been looking at it over here. At least I have for quite some time. Well, we're back in that range, right? So I guess it comes down to, are you directionally trying to work back to the bottom, or are you waiting for a clean break one way or the other, that eventually we will see that clean break? Just it's been tough. It has been tough. Over in the healthcare sector, kind of drug down a little bit today. Again, much like some of our other areas, as long as the support level is holding, I'm okay, and I'm very open to looking at short-term bullish opportunities within the sector. We're getting close to it again. We really are. One nice thing that has kind of developed over the last few days, if you want to call it nice, is assuming that we are able to hold support or ultimately put in a higher low, is we have created another level of resistance that we can now be looking towards as a potential breakout point if we see appreciation off of support, work our way back up. We could see, there's a little bit of room between our resistance level up here and then, of course, kind of the more longer term resistance level that we've been watching the last few weeks. Again, I think this support level is important. If these things break, I won't be bullish on anything, at least anything that breaks those support levels, because again, much like so many of the things that we've seen, if they're yet to break support, that's a positive. But if that breaks, there's quite a bit of room to the downside, right, before they get back to that next level. So it'll be interesting over there as well. Good bounce back for discretionary. Partially, you had Foot Locker had really good earnings, and we're up like 14 or something %. A couple other companies had a pretty decent day. But I mean, how do you trust this chart? From a bullish point of view, it can change. And this is what's so cool about it. We can always be thinking, hey, let's run up, Friday into Monday, and let's sell off, Tuesday, Wednesday, bottom out on Thursday, head back up Friday, and then break whatever ends up being our high point on next Monday, right? We might get that. We don't know. We still have some time to turn this thing around, right? But as of today, that's just thinking ahead, hypothetically, right? So as of today, we are still showing a lot of signs of bearishness over in the sector. Today's strength in the earnings notwithstanding. But it definitely had a nice gap up. Those earnings yesterday really hurt it. The earnings today really did help it. Now, as we work into next week, we kind of have that stuff for the most part behind us. We can kind of get back to pure technicals in this sector. It'll be interesting, but yeah, I don't know how you could be bullish on this downward movement. I wouldn't fault somebody for potentially going bearish if that was their trading style, personally. And over in real estate, kind of a back and forth, wishy-washy type of a day in the real estate sector. Really, I don't think a ton has changed on this from where we've been, most of the last week and a half, 2 weeks. We do continue to push up slowly but surely. We do have some pullback days, but we've responded well to those. Ultimately, this trend line would be something I'd love to see it test. The breakdown point or breakout point up here would be something I'd love to see it test. If that fails, then I'm done with the real estate. I'm never really that interested in the real estate sector. I talk about it more with you guys, honestly, than I think about it myself. But I would like to see that test to see if there's an opportunity there that folks want to take advantage of. But really, I don't think a ton to see here. Very indecisive today, though. A little bit of back and forth and not really going anywhere. One of those days. And speaking of not going anywhere, we have our communication services sector that really had a hard time. It kind of got running, gapped up on the open. Things were looking good, and then again, who wants to buy it? Who wants to buy a chart that looks like this? And so many of the companies within this sector, do. Google came off of some pretty strong support yesterday at about $1,000. And so that's been interesting, but, still pretty ugly. Netflix is pretty ugly. A lot of these things are kind of ugly looking charts. And of course, it shows in the sector ETF as well. Again, I don't really think we can say anything other than, until we see some buy signals, we have to continue to look at this through bearish eyes. We've not seen buy signals for a very, very long time. And, if we can't get at least one buy signal, how do we get the second one to get more people on board, right? So looking pretty ugly. Again, one of those type of charts that if we're to see some downward movement going into Friday or Monday, I could certainly understand it from a technical point of view, trading in on the bearish side of things. That's where we find our sectors today. Again, I mean, not a lot to see, nothing, not a lot of things changing too dramatically. Interesting that staples, in my mind, pulled back so heavily. I think early next week is going to be important for them. But really, it was kind of the day before a holiday for the most part in the market. And I'm glad. Like I said, when I saw the futures this morning, I said, don't run today. No one's going to trust it. And luckily, the close is important, right? And that's exactly what ended up happening. Over in metals, nothing too dramatic. We continue to push to the upside after breaking back above that 1220 range, 50-day moving average area. On gold, continue to work our way up. We are right in the middle of the trading range in gold right now, as maybe we're going to take another run at 1240. Silver, a little more strength today, but ultimately in the same location. We're really just back into that old trading range within the gold and silver markets right now. And so really you're either playing within those ranges or you're waiting for it to break those ranges, right? That probably hasn't changed today from yesterday, and probably hasn't been changing as a whole too much as of late. So we kind of find ourselves still within our same trading ranges over there. In the dollar, just didn't really, and again, it's okay. It's not the end of the world, but weren't able to carry any momentum off of yesterday's, nice bounce off of 96, closing, not particularly great, but down 0.11. I mean, nothing really notable as we go into the holiday. So again, I really think for me at least, 96 is the area that we're looking towards. As long as that holds, I'm going to be comfortable with bullish opportunities on the dollar. That falters, that 50 would kind of be, well, probably wouldn't be bullish, but I'd wait to see it break the 50 before I actually changed my opinion of potentially of being bearish. I don't really think that's going to happen, but we are getting closer to 97. And while we've taken it out once before, it's also been, some resistance for us. And so that will be something to keep an eye as we work into the later part of this week and into next week as well. But not a lot to see here. Natural gas, it's an interesting ride. We ran way back up, and let's maybe go to an hourly chart to see this all in action. Kind of ran to the upside, kind of drifted all the way back. This thing is volatile, right? There's no doubt about it. It's moving, it's shaking, and it is never boring. Again, as a swing trade, it's just not. I don't see any real opportunity in the short term for a swing trade. Obviously, there's lots of opportunities on the intraday in this market right now with that volatility. But kind of nice to see it. It's been a wild ride. It's gone up, it's gone down, but it's really for the most part just kind of hovered right these last few trading days. It's done it in spectacular fashion. It's not been boring, but we haven't had continuing to shoot up or a deep sell off or anything like that. So I think we'll just have to keep an eye on this one. I at least know that's how I'm looking at it going into next week. Hard to see a great trade, swing trade right there in my mind. And lastly, our friends over in crude, they had a nice little bounce back, ultimately selling off of the high and closing right below that low point that we set up last week. Again, one of those areas where we can kind of start to look and say, let's keep an eye on this new intraday floor that has developed over the last couple of days. You have to forgive me, I cannot draw straight lines, but that will work enough, I guess. Let's continue to see, let's see what happens if that fails us, right? We know there's not a ton of support for a ways. I think, I would argue that really, $50 is probably the next, important price. I might be wrong, but that's kind of where my head's at. But hey, we closed in the green, I guess. I mean, it's hard to say anything bullish about it, even on a bullish day, when we're up over 2%. It's really hard to say anything other than good for you today, crude. I don't really know what to say other than that. I think, for me to, even be thinking about anything from a long perspective as the chart's currently constituted, you're basically above this trend line, well above $58. And I just don't see it shooting straight up to that, although it might, never know. But ladies and gentlemen, that's where we find ourselves after, really a fairly uneventful day. It really kind of, happened on the gap on the open. And yeah, we had some selling, the last 45 minutes or so of the day to kind of take a little wind out of the sails of the bulls. But it was nothing dramatic, really. Kind of day that, you kind of expect during the holidays. So it'll be interesting. Like I said, I don't know what Friday will hold, but my expectations are it's probably, I guess any, big real news comes out that can change. But assuming, nothing really dramatic happens, I would expect it's going to be kind of more of the same. I expect to see us working into Monday with that support level on the Dow and the S&P holding up. And really getting ready for the challenge as we get back into the normal trading routine. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do the market recap for today and for this week. We will have Thanksgiving, and then I will not be with you on Friday, but we will be back up and running here as business as usual on Monday of next week and see where the market has taken us. Thank you all so much for your time. It's always a pleasure. It's getting to spend time with you guys. Thank you for all of your support for us over here at Tackle Trading. It means a lot to us, and we certainly love having you being a part of our community. So thank you so much, each and every one of you guys. Have a safe and happy holiday. If you're traveling, do so safely. Enjoy time with your friends and your family, and we will get right back to it next week. So thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Get out of here. Happy trading, and I will see you all in the next one.